Pros and cons, artificial reefs. Today we're going to recognize human dependence on ocean systems and explain how human activities such as runoff, artificial reefs, or use of resources have modified these systems. Starter. Some areas of the ocean are known as dead zones. These zones form when excess organic material decomposes. This increased decomposition uses up the oxygen from the water, which human activity is most affected by the increasing number of dead zones in the ocean. Offshore drilling because the water in the dead zone is toxic, commercial fishing because fish cannot survive without oxygen, commercial shipping because dead zones change the course of ocean currents, sand mining because oxygen is not available to form the sands on the ocean beaches. So you have to think here that what do dead zones cause? So dead zones break down the plant material in the ocean. But the problem is that decomposition uses up the oxygen out of the water. So commercial fishing is a human activity that's going to be affected because fish can't survive without oxygen when these dead zones are being produced. Artificial reefs.
Coral reefs are one of the biggest biodiversity areas in the world, more so even than the rainforest. And everywhere in the world, coral reefs are in trouble. Artificial reefs have been demonstrated when they're clean to bring proper environmental benefits to the already stressed natural reefs around the world.
There are no longer living reefs. There are very few of them left. But when we can go and sink something like this, it's amazing how fast marine life will adhere to it and become its own natural reef and natural ecosystem.
Big ships like the Vandenberg or unique vessels like the Clamagore present real challenges to adventure sports people.
Going and putting habitat back in the ocean that can have sea life grow on it and be an attractor for fish, that also makes it great for fishing and diving.
In time, the boat's going to become colonized by marine invertebrates, and they build a home, and smaller creatures beget bigger creatures, and all that has to be part of the ecosystem. We want to make sure it's safe for all those creatures.
Like a train stop in the Old West, soon there's a bar and a hotel, and then a city builds up around it. This is what the fish are looking for too. Before the Vandenberg was there, it looked like the surface of the moon. Now, it's 2 football fields long and 10 stories tall. There are 200 species of fish that are living on the Vandenberg that weren't there before she was deployed, and invertebrates in their uncounted millions. The Clamagore is unlike any artificial reef ever attempted. The teams that we have assembled have been responsible for the most economically successful and environmentally successful artificial reefs anywhere in the world.
Every ship or boat that we look at, we evaluate it to see if there's going to be hazardous material. We check for the wiring, the surface material, which would include paint, insulation, sound deadening materials.
All that stuff needs to be pulled out, cleaned, and made inert, so that we're doing something positive for the environment and not putting something in there that could be a detractor.
A lot of these vessels went down in the war, and all the hazardous material went down with them.
Some people will tell you the jury's still out on artificial reefs. It is not. The jury's in, it's been in, they work. I drank this Kool-Aid a long time ago, so I'm a big fan.
So let's read the teak. We're going to recognize human dependence on ocean systems and explain how human activities such as runoff, artificial reefs, or use of resources have modified these systems. The following slides are examples of artificial man-made reefs. They can be made of plastic pipes, sunken ships, and oil rigs. Marine organisms use these structures to make their habitats their homes. Organisms like coral, algae, barnacles, and oysters, they attach themselves to these structures. Examples of pros and cons of artificial reefs. Pros: attract scuba divers, fishermen, surfers, easing the stress on pressure on natural reefs. They provide new food sources and food webs. They can enhance the development of rare coral species not often found in natural reef habitats. They save landfill space and settlement space for organisms like corals, barnacles, sponges, algae, which must attach to a substrate. Cons. So why are artificial reefs not good? They can be expensive to clean, prep, and sink ships or other artificial reefs. Trash disposal is causing an underwater junkyard, can be dangerous. There have been deadly accidents of divers exploring shipwrecks and artificial reefs, can become loose or move during storms and cause damage to nature and natural reefs, disturbing habitats and nesting sites. Now it's your turn. On the next slide, read each statement carefully and drag and drop it under the correct heading. It will be either a pro for a positive environment or a con for a negative environment. So here's for a positive environment, here's for a negative environment. So what you're going to do is minimize, and then you can come over here and then read and drag and drop. So most objects rust, metal objects rust, allowing metals directly into the marine environment. This is a bad thing, so it would go over here underneath cons. Okay, and then you would do that for each of these. So if we wanted to read one from over here, popular fishing spots which contribute to the problem of overfishing. Okay, so that would be against an artificial reef. Okay, let's go to the next slide. For your connection, which of these human activities is most likely to cause excessive growth of phytoplankton in the world's oceans? The use of chemical fertilizers that are carried by runoff into rivers, the logging of old-growth forests, which result in erosion, the spraying of chemical herbicides that reduce carbon dioxide in the air, the mining of fossil fuels, which requires digging underground tunnels. So increased growth of phytoplankton is going to be caused from chemical fertilizers. So fertilizers that we put on our lawns or that are used in agriculture, when it rains, the rain picks up these fertilizers and it's washed into our rivers, and then the rivers drain into the ocean. And so the fertilizer causes phytoplankton, the ocean plants, to grow really fast and too much. And that's a bad thing, because remember, when the phytoplankton dies, it needs to be decomposed. And when it's decomposed by bacteria, the bacteria use up oxygen in the ocean, causing a dead zone. So the use of chemical fertilizers that's carried up by runoffs to rivers. So the human activity is us putting those fertilizers on our yards and using it for agricultural purposes. So today for your exit, you are going to do an ed puzzle on storm water runoff. Again, runoff, when it rains, it picks up the oil in the roads, the gas, and that water is drained into our drainage systems, into our rivers, then into our oceans.